Yes. You put the lime in the coconut and then you, hey, everybody, how are you doing? Well, it says it's live, and I mean, now it goes just like that. Hello, everybody. So good to see everyone. Welcome. Bosto be unto us all, and as David Barry likes to say, be the bisto, which I can dig that as well. Saw him on the Soul Tribe on Saturday night. Didn't get to watch it live because I didn't have the internet over the weekend, but it was good. I digress. Favor upon us all. May we all be empowered to prosper. So, how's it going, folks? What's up? I'm clicking off here. Yeah, the spirits are strong. They are talking to us, and I think I got them all done right now. Man, looking good, dude. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am looking good. So are y'all. So good to see everyone. Hello, David Castle, all the moderators, Regina, David Barry, Theresa, Grandpa Brian, Sarah Horton. How are you, my dear? Looking good. Love the rabbits. Emperor Rex, namaste. Good to see you. Sweet Loretta, how are you? Lavera, hello, Lois, Queen of Tarot. Going to have Lois on here. Let's see. Boy, just saying hi, everybody. Going to have David on Wednesday. Looks like that's going to work out. And, you know, Big Al, if you're around, love to have you as part of the discussion. So, how are you? How was your Saturday and Sunday? We got to experience a windstorm. Gotta love them. It's nature. And we're going to get into a book today that is very controversial, probably has the worst stigmatism of ignorance stamped to it. But we endeavor to, hey, Big Al, how are you doing? Um, to break through that ignorance. The regrettable thing is, in particularly in Western cultures, is that, man, the God spells deep. And even those who don't profess, necessarily to a religion, to a God, are still impacted. It's surprising to see how much of our core is actually impacted on ignorance. Ignorance. I was in a dark place for almost 50 years. And it is a dark place. Hey, Peter, how you doing? So I want to discuss some realities, and then we're going to get into our mystery book, and you're going to like it. So dig this, folks. This is where it's really at. And as he gets over here, this is God. Whatever God, whatever construct, whatever it is, this is God. This is the devil. This is Satan. This is Lucifer. This is Metastaseles. This is whoever the boogeyman may be in your life. Because this is God. This is the devil. This is you. This is me. We're looking at 27,000 atoms. And folks, this can only be seen under electron microscope. You can't see it with the human eye. And the folks over at I think this may have been MIT. I'm not exactly sure on that. They were able to do these slices, and then they literally generated a 3D appearance of an atom. More particularly 27,000 atoms in this case. But what was so interesting is that as you watch the video, there is a time where there was chaos, but yet there was symmetry, there was pattern, there seemed to be intelligence. Because if that isn't intelligence, then we aren't. And this is one of the most amazing pictures. I meditated on this a lot. This is a single electron. And that's a universe. That's God. That's Satan. That's Lucifer. That is Jesus Christ. That is you. It's me. It's everything. Now, isn't it interesting that when we take that approach and say, well, that is God, we say yes, because we know it to be true. Allow me to get out of that. No, so hold on one, folks, as he's over here. Yeah, I'm driving the bus, but I know where we're going. So that gives me a distinct advantage. Okay, there we go. Now we're cooking with Crisco. So that is God. It's us. It's reality. Everything is predicated on structure of matter. All matter is a singularity, an atom that becomes unified, an atom that begins to vibrate, begins to align to a certain frequency. And when that happens, well, we have stuff like this. I mean, crystals. We have, well, everything that we perceive. The question is consciousness an atom? And I just saw my paper fall down. I have to get that. Could consciousness be quantified as an atom? Or is thought above the very structure of what we call reality? Now, this is going someplace. It really is. Someone's saying, well, where is this dude going to? Well, we're getting there. Trust me. Because we're going to break some taboos, and allow me one second as I get out of this file. There we go. And it's very interesting to see our perceptions. So without any further ado, allow me to introduce to you our reading today. Our reading today is the Satanic Bible by Anton Sandor LaVey. Now, this is probably one of the most vilified books, but yet it is outselling the Bible now. It's not what you perceive. This is not about some early Christian made up horned cloven hoof deity. In fact, ignorance has prevailed so dominantly where Anton was really talking about. And we're going to get into it as far as we can get. And I think that when we have a chance to really review this book, you're going to be quite surprised what the book is really about. Reality cannot exist unless there's an antithesis to every progenitor within a play. Life is a play. This reality is make-believe. Look at the political system. It's all about lies and deceptions. So if the United States is a Christian nation, why do all of our leaders act like the devil? They are Satan because they lie and they deceive. That can't be the Christian God, could it? How could that be a nation founded on Jesus Christ? Now you see where we're going. So what we're really talking about here is, what is Satan? This is the man who started the Satanic Church, and we're going to read why he did it. But why? What is Satan? Well, let's get into the story. So this is a story about a writer for the San Francisco Chronicle. As he first began to meet Anton and write about him. And you're going to learn how virtually all of Hollywood are practicing Satanists. Most carry cards. Many politicians carry cards. You're going to be quite surprised to see that, well, the devil, if he existed, would be very proud. We're going to get into this. I want to get into this as he's going out there and he's talking about devil stories make good cover stories. He said, it was not the practice of the black arts itself that I considered to be the story, because that is nothing new in the world. There were devil-worshiping sects and voodoo cults before there were Christians. In the 18th century England, a Hellfire Club with connections to the American colonies through Benjamin Franklin gained some brief notoriety. During the early part of the 20th century, the press publicized Aleister Crowley as the wickedest man in the world, and there were hints in the 20s and the 30s of the Black Order in Germany. They existed. To this seemingly old story, LaVey and his organizations of contemporary Faustins offered two strikingly new chapters. First, they blasphemously represented themselves as a church, a term previously confined to the branches of Christianity. Instead of the traditional coven of Satanism and witchcraft lore, second, they practiced their black magic openly instead of underground. Rather than arrange a preliminary interview with LaVey for discussions on his heretical innovations, my first step was in research. I decided to watch and to listen to him as an unidentified member of the audience. He was described in some newspapers as a former circus and carnival lion tamer and a trickster, now representing himself as the devil's representative on earth. And I wanted to determine first whether he was a true Satanist, a prankster, or a quack. And I had already met people in the limelight of the occult business. In fact, Jean Dixon was my landlady, and I had a chance to write about her before Ruth Montgomery did. But I had considered all of the occultists phonies, hypocrites, and quacks, and I would never spend 5 minutes writing about their various forms of hocus pocus. All the occultists I had met and heard were white lighters, alleged seers, prophesiers, and witches wrapping their supposedly mystic power around God-based spiritual communication. LaVey, seeming to laugh at them, if not spit on them in contempt, emerged from between the lines of newspaper stories as a black magician basing his work on the dark side of nature and the carnal side of humanity. There seemed to be nothing spiritual about his church. As I listened to LaVey talk the first time, I realized at once there was nothing to connect him with the occult business. He could not even be described as a metaphysical. The brutally frank talk he delivered was pragmatic, relativistic, and above all, rational. It was unorthodox, to be sure, a blast at the established religious worship, repression of humanity's carnal nature, phony pretense at piety in the course of an existence based on dog-eat-dog material pursuits. It was also full of sardonic satire on human folly. But most important of all, the talk was logical. It was not quack magic that LaVey offered in his audience. It was common sense philosophy based on the realities of life. After I became convinced of LaVey's sincerity, I had to convince him that I intended to do some serious research instead of adding to the accumulation of hacked articles dealing with the Church of Satan as some new type freak show. I boned up on Satanism, discussed its history and rationale with LaVey, and attended some midnight rituals in the famous Victorian manse once used as the Church of Satan headquarters. Out of all that, I produced a series of articles, only to find that it was not what the publisher of respectable magazines wanted. They were interested only in the freak show kind of article. Finally, it was the so-called girly or man magazine Night of September 1968, that published the first definitive article on LaVey, the Church of Satan, and LaVey's synthesis of the old devil legends and black magic lore into the modern philosophy and practice of Satanism that all followers and imitators now use as their model, their guide, and even their Bible. My magazine article was the beginning, not the end, as it has been to my other writing subjects, of a long, intimate association. Out of it came my biography of LaVey, The Devil's Avenger, published by Pyramid in 1974. After the book was published, I became a card-carrying member and subsequently a priest of the Church of Satan, a title I now proudly share with my celebrated persons. The post-midnight philosophical discussions I began with LaVey in 1967 continue today. A decade later, supplemented sometimes these days by a nifty witch or some other of our own music, him on organ and me on drums, and a bizarre cabaret populated by super realistic humanoids of LaVey's creation. All of LaVey's background seemed to prepare him for this role. He is the descendant of Georgian, Romanian, and Alsatian grandparents, including a gypsy grandmother who passed on to him the legends of vampires and witches in her native Transylvania. As early as the age of 5, LaVey was reading weird tale magazines and books such as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula. Same here. Y'all did the same. Though he was different from other children, they appointed him as a leader in marches and maneuvers in mock military orders. In 1942, when LaVey was 12, his fascination with toy soldiers led him to the concern over World War II. He delved into military manuals and discovered arsenals for equipment of armies and navies could be bought like groceries in a supermarket and used to conquer nations. The idea took shape in his head that, the contrary to what the Christian Bible said, the earth would not be inherited by the meek, but by the mighty. In high school, LaVey became something of an offbeat child prodigy. Reserving most of his serious studies for outside the school, he delved into music, metaphysics, and secrets of the occult. At 15, he became the second oboist in the San Francisco Ballet Symphony Orchestra. Bored with the high school classes, LaVey dropped out in his junior year, left home, and joined the Clyde Beatty Circus as a cage boy, watering and feeding the lions and tigers. Animal trainer Betty noticed that LaVey was comfortable working with the big cats and made him an assistant trainer. Possessed since childhood by a passion for the arts and for culture, LaVey was not content merely to be the excitement of training jungle beasts and working with them in the ring as a fill-in for Betty. By age 10, he had taught himself to play the piano by ear. This came in handy when the circus calliope player became drunk before a performance and was unable to go on. LaVey volunteered to replace him, confident he could handle the unfamiliar organ keyboard well enough to provide the necessary background music. It turned out he knew more music and played better than the regular anyway, I tongue-tied on that one. It turned out that he knew more music and played better, so Betty cashiered the drunk and installed LaVey as the instrument. He accompanied the Human Cannonball, Hugo Zanini, and the Wallendas High Wire Acts, among others. When LaVey was 18, he left the circus and joined a carnival. There he became an assistant to a magician, learned hypnosis, and studied more about the occult. It was a curious combination. On one side, he was working in an atmosphere of life at its rawest levels of earthy music the smell of wild animals and sawdust, acts in which a second of a missed timing meant accident or death, performances that demanded youth and strength and shed those who grew old like last year's clothes, a world of physical excitement that had magical attractions. On the other hand, he was working with magic in the dark side of the human brain. Perhaps the strangest combination influenced the way he began to view humanity as he played organ for carnival sideshows. On Saturday night, LaVey recalled in one of our long talks, I would see men lusting after half-naked girls dancing at the carnival. And on Sunday morning, when I was playing the organ for tent show evangelist at the other end of the carnival lot, I would see these same men sitting in the pews with their wives and children, asking God to forgive them and purge them of their carnal desires. And the next Saturday night, they'd be back at the carnival or some other place of indulgence. I knew then that the Christian church thrives on hypocrisy and that men's carnal nature will out no matter how much it is purged or scourged by any white light religion. Little personal commentary. Of all the churches that I have been a part of, every one of them had adultery, fornication, high sexual energy, every one of them. And you know what? The biggest liars I've ever met in my life were in those churches. I have been screwed by, not by men who never profess Christianity. I've been screwed by those who say that they're devout Christians, men of integrity, moral compass, who would rile at me to bring such a book to any audience. Satan is not a personification. Satan, remember, by Anton LaVey's definition, and we're going to get more into that, is the negative energy, the dark energy. And it's been classified dark by those of the white light religions. Though LaVey did not realize it then, he was on his way towards formulating a religion that would serve as the antithesis of Christianity and its Judaic heritage. It was an old religion, older than Christianity or Judaism, but it had never been formalized, arranged into a body of thought and ritual. It was to become LaVey's role in 20th century civilization. Folks, this is older than any religion in the world. Why do you think they vilified it, hid it? How shall we say, plagiarized it, tried to rearrange it? After LaVey became a married man himself in 1951 at the age of 21, he abandoned his wondrous works of the carnival to settle into a career better suited for homemaking. He had enrolled as a criminology degree major in City College of San Francisco. This led to his first conformist job, a photographer for the San Francisco Police Department. As it worked out, that job had as much to do as any other with his development of Satanism as a way of life. LaVey said, I saw the bloodiest, grimmest side of human nature, LaVey recounted in a session dealing with his past life. People shot by nuts, knifed by their friends, little kids splattered in the gutter by hit-and-run drivers. It was disgusting and depressing. I asked myself, where is God? I came to detest the sanctimonious attitude of people towards violence, always saying it was God's will. I never understood that myself. How could something so grotesque, something so horrendous, be of a loving God? Why isn't this loving God stronger? All he does is sell a song and a dance, never delivering. Our world, if this is ruled or even overseen by a loving God, I don't want any of that kind of love. I'll put it that way. So he quit in disgust after 3 years of being a crime photographer and returned to playing organ, this time in nightclubs and theaters, to earn a living while he continued his studies into his life's passion, the black arts. Once a week, he held classes on arcane topics, hauntings, ESP, dreams, vampires, werewolves, divination, ceremonial magic, etc. They attracted many people who were, or have since become, well known in the arts and sciences and the business world. Eventually, a magic circle evolved from this group. The major purpose of the circle was to meet for the performance of magical rituals LaVey had discovered or devised. He had accumulated a library of works that described the Black Mass and other infamous ceremonies conducted by groups such as the Knights Templar in the 14th century in France, the Hell Fire Club, and the Golden Dawn in 18th century, and 19th century England. The intent of some of these secret orders was to blaspheme, lampoon the Christian church, and address themselves to the devil as an anthropomorphic deity that represented the reverse of God. In LaVey's view, the devil was not that, but rather a dark, hidden force in nature responsible for the workings of earthly affairs, a force for which neither science nor religion had any explanation. LaVey's Satan is the spirit of progress, the inspirer of all great movements that contribute to the development of civilization and the advancement of mankind. He is the spirit of revolt that leads to freedom, the embodiment of all heresies that liberate. On the last night of April 1966, on the Warpschnacht of the most important festival in the lore of magic and witchcraft, LaVey's ritualistic shaved his head in accordance with magical tradition and announced the formation of the Church of Satan for proper identification as its minister. He put on the clerical collar. Up to that collar, he looked almost holy, but his Genghis Khan-like shaven head, his Metaphorestian beard, and his narrow eyes gave him the necessary demonic look for his priesthood of the devil's church on earth. For one thing, LaVey explained himself, calling it a church enabled me to follow the magic formula of 1 part outrage to 9 parts social respectability that is needed for success. But the main purpose was to gather a group of like-minded individuals together for the use of their combined energies in calling up the dark force in nature that is called Satan. As LaVey pointed out, all other churches are based on worship of the spirit and denial of the flesh and the intellect. He saw the need for a church that would recapture man's mind and carnal desires as objects of celebration. Rational self-interest would be encouraged and a healthy ego companioned. He began to realize that the old concept of a black mass to satirize Christian services was outmoded, or, as he put it, beating a dead horse. In the Church of Satan, LaVey initiated some exhilarating psychodramas in lieu of Christianity's self-debasing services, thereby exercising repressions and inhabitations fostered by the white light religions. You know, folks, if you were never taught about demons, you would never be demon-possessed. And if you ask for the Holy Spirit to enter into you, how is that any different than any other demonic spiritual possession? There was a revolution in the Christian church itself against orthodox rites and traditions. It had become popular to declare that God is dead. So the alternative rites that LaVey worked out, while still maintaining some of the trappings of ancient ceremonies, were changed from the negative mockery to the positive forms of celebrations and purges. Satanic weddings, consecrating the joys of the flesh, funerals devoid of the sanctimonious platitudes, lust rituals to help individuals attain their sex desires, destruction of rituals to enable members of the Satanic Church to triumph over enemies. On special occasions, such as baptisms, weddings, and funerals, in the name of the devil, press coverage, though unsolicited, was phenomenal. By 67, the newspapers were sending reporters to write about the Church of Satan, extended from San Francisco across the Pacific to Tokyo and across the Atlantic to Paris. A photo of a nude woman, half covered by a leopard skin, serving as an altar to Satan in a LaVey-conceived wedding ceremony, was transmitted by major wire services to daily newspapers everywhere, and it showed up on the front page of the such bulwarks as the media as the LA Times. As the result of the publicity, the grottos, LaVey's counterpart to covens, affiliated with the Church of Satan, spread throughout the world, proving one of LaVey's cardinal messages: the devil is alive and highly popular with a great many people. Of course, LaVey pointed out to everyone who would listen that the devil to him and his followers was not the stereotype fellow eloped in red garb with horns, tails, and pitchforks, but rather the dark forces in nature that human beings are just beginning to fathom. How did LaVey square that explanation with his own appearance at times in black raw with horns? He replied, people need ritual with symbols such as those you find in a baseball game or a church. Folks, listen, I have seen some pretty weird garbs. Go to a Catholic mass. I mean, such as you find in baseball games or church services or wars, as vehicles for expanding emotions they can't release or even understand on their own. Nevertheless, LaVey himself soon tired of the games. There were setbacks. First, some of LaVey's neighbors began complaining about the fully grown lion he was keeping as a house pet, and eventually the big cat was donated to the local zoo. Next, one of LaVey's most devoted witches, Jane Mansfield. Did y'all know that Jane's Mansfield, Marilyn Monroe were witches? You'd be surprised to know how many others are. Died under a curse he had placed on the head of her suitor, lawyer Sam Brody. For a variety of reasons I have explained in the Devil's Avengers, LaVey had persistently warned her away from Brody and felt depressed over her death. It was the second tragic death in the 60s of a Hollywood sex symbol with whom he had been intimately involved. The other was Marilyn Monroe. LaVey's paramour for a brief but crucial period in 1948, when he had quit the carnival and was playing organ for strippers around the Los Angeles area. Now, due to time, I'm going to kind of spin this up because I really want to get into what you can actually see as the book itself. But it's important to understand who LaVey is or was. He's since passed on. It says on the top of that list, LaVey was tired of organizing entertainments and purges for his church members. He had gotten in touch with the last living remnants of the pure occult fraternities of Europe and was busily acquiring their philosophies and secret rituals left over from the pre-Hitler era, and needed time to study, write, and work out new principles. He had long been experimenting and applying the principles of geometric spatial concepts in what he terms the law of the trapezoid. He scoffs at current faddists who are barking up the wrong pyramids. He was also becoming widely sought as a speaker, guest on radio and television programs, and the production and/or technical advisor of scores of television producers and movie making, turning out satanic chillers. Sometimes he was also an actor. As a sociologist, Clinton R. Sanders points out, no occultist has had as a direct an impact upon formulaic cinematic presentations of Satanism, as has Anton Sandor LaVey. Ritual and esoteric symbolisms are central elements in LaVey's church, and the films in which he had a hand contain detailed portrayals of satanic rituals and are filled with traditional occult symbols. The emphasis upon ritual in the Church of Satan is intended to focus the emotional powers within each individual. Similarly, ornate ritualism is central to LaVey's films may reasonably be seen as a mechanism to involve and focus the emotional experience of the cinema audience. Folks, this is what you could call seeding. The fact is, most of America in the last 70 years has been brought up more on satanic values than Christian morals. It's just a fact. I want to keep on going on here. LaVey spreading out from organized churches' activities to writing books for the worldwide distribution has, of course, greatly expanded the Church of Satan membership. Satanism growing popularity has naturally been accompanied by scary stories from religious groups complaining that the Satanic Bible now outsells the Christian Bible on colleges' campuses. It does, and is the leading corrosive factor in youngsters turning away from God. That ain't true. And certainly one suspects the Pope Paul had LaVey in mind when he issued his worldwide proclamation 2 years ago that the devil is alive and a person of living, fire-breathing character spreading evil over the earth. LaVey, maintaining that evil is live, spelled backwards, and should be indulged in and enjoyed, answers the Pope and the religious scare groups this way. You need to hear this. People, organizations, nations are making millions of dollars off of us. What would they do without us? Without the Church of Satan, there wouldn't have anybody to rage at and to take the blame for all the rotten things happening in the world. If they really feel this way, they shouldn't have blown us out of proportion. What you really have to believe instead is that they are the charlatans, and they're really glad to have us around so they can exploit us. We've been an extremely valuable commodity. We've helped business, lifted up the economy, and some of the millions of dollars we have generated flowed and have flown towards and flown into the Christian church. We have proved many times over the 9th Satanic Statement that says the church and countless individuals cannot exist without the devil. They can't. Why would they exist? What would they have a reason to exist for? These gods of the Christian, Judaic, Islam, Hindu, they always blame the converts. They always blame all the problems that they are supposedly the all-powerful ones that created this thing. Didn't the Christian God say that, is it the Jewish God? It's hard to find. But didn't he say he created evil for his own pleasure? I mean, how much of a deity are you going to worship that loves the smell of burnt flesh? Humanity is no longer willing to wait for any afterlife that promises to reward the clean, pure, translated, ascetic, drab spirit. There is a mood of neo-paganism and hedonism, and from it there have emerged a wide variety of brilliant individuals: doctors, lawyers, engineers, teachers, writers, stockbrokers, politicians, real estate developers, actors, actresses, mass communication media people, to cite a few categories, who are actual card-carrying Satanists, who are interested in formalizing and perpetuating this all-pervading religion and way of life. It is not an easy religion to adapt in a society ruled for so long by Puritan ethics. There is no false altruism or mandatory love thy neighbor concept in this religion. Satanism is a blatantly selfish, brutal philosophy. It is based on the belief that human beings are inherently selfish, violent creatures, that life is a Darwinism struggle for survival of the fittest, and that only the strong survive, and the earth will be ruled by those who fight to win the ceaseless competition that exists in all jungles, including those of the urbanized society. Abhor this brutal outlook, if you will. It is based, as it has been for centuries, on real conditions that exist in the world we inhabit, rather than the mystical lands of milk and honey depicted in the Christian Bible. Now, I want to get into it in itself. Prologue. The gods of the right-hand path. You see, folks, magic exists. You have the left-hand path or you have the right-hand path. It's still magic. There's still powerful energies behind it, saturating us. Why? We are the creative conduits, the capacitors. No God can create anything without the flesh. We're the ones who do it. LaVey knew this. Let's go on. The gods of the right-hand path have bickered and quarreled for an entire age of earth. Each of these deities and their respective priests and ministers have attempted to find wisdom in their own lives. The ice age of religious thought can last but a limited time in this great scheme of human existence. The gods of wisdom defiled have had their saga, and their millennium hath become as reality. Each with his own divine path to paradise hath accused the other of heresies and spiritual indiscretions. The ring of the, and folks, I don't know if this is the Nablagan, doth carry an everlasting curse, but only because those who seek it, think in terms of good and evil, themselves being at all times good. You see, folks, what's evil? You can't define evil. You can't define good. Whose measuring stick are you using? One thing I found about Lucifer, I never found in any writing about Lucifer ever condemning one human being. The creature, if it exists, always edifies, builds up. The gods of the past have become as their own devils in order to live. Feebly, their ministers play the devil's game to fill their tabernacles and pay the mortgages on their temples. Alas, too long have they studied righteousness, and poor and incompetent devils they make. So they all join hands in brotherly unity, and in their desperation go to Valhalla for their last great Emancipational Council. Ecumenical. I'm having a hard time on my tongue. Maybe I'll get some tea. Oh, yes. Ecumenical Council. Darwith near in the gloom, the twilight of the gods. The ravens of night have flown forth to summon Loki, who hath set Valhalla aflame with the searing trident of the inferno. The twilight is done, a glow of new light is born out of the night, and Lucifer is risen, once more to proclaim, this is the age of Satan. Satan rules the earth. The gods of the unjust are dead. This is the morning of magic, the undefiled wisdom. The flesh prevaileth, and a great church shall be built, consecrated in its name. No longer shall man's salvation be dependent on his self-denial, and it will be known that the world of flesh and the living shall be the greatest preparation for any and all eternal delights. These are the 9 statements of Satan. Rege Sataneus Avea Sataneus. Hail Satan, the 9 Satanic Statements. 1. Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. 2. Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. 3. Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of the hypocritical self-deceit. 4. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. 5. Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. 6. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for the psychic vampires. What do you think takes place on Sunday? It's a buffet. I know. I was on the menu once. 7. Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who, because of his divine, spiritual, and intellectual development, has become the most vicious animal of all. These are true statements, folks. I know we don't like to say this, but sometimes we have to put the big boy britches on. Satan represents all of the so-called sins, as they all lead to physical, mental, and emotional gratification. 9. Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had. He has kept it in business all these years. Fire, the book of Satan, the infernal diatribe. The first book of the Satanic Bible is not an attempt to blaspheme as much as it is a statement of what might be termed diabolical indignation. The devil has been attacked by the men of God relentlessly and without reservation. Never has there been an opportunity, a short of fiction, for the dark prince to speak out in the same manner as the spokesman of the Lord of the righteous. How would you like to be on trial and the only evidence is offered is by the prosecution? You don't have a word in it. The pulpit pounders of the past have been free to define good and evil as they see fit and have gladly smashed into oblivion any who disagree with their lives, both verbally and at times physically. Their talk of charity, when applied to his infernal majesty, becomes an empty sham, the most unfairly too, considering the obvious fact that without their satanic foe, their very religions would collapse. No one would give a church a dime. Who's the most biggest single real estate holder in the world? Why? It's the Christian church, the Catholic Church. Why? Why does a God demand payment? For what? Are you buying salvation? We continue. How sad that the allegorical personage most responsible for the success of their spiritual religions is shown the least amount of charity and the most consistent abuse, and by those who most unconsciously preach the rules of fair play. For all the centuries of shouting down the devil has received, he has never shouted back at his detractors. He has remained the gentleman at all times, while those he supports rant and raves. He has shown himself to be a model of deportment, but now he feels it's time to shout back. He has decided it is finally time to receive his due. Now, the preponderance rule books of hypocrisy are no longer needed. In order to relearn the law of the jungle, a small, slim diatribe will do. Each verse is an infernal. Each word is a tongue of fire. The flames of hell burn fierce and purify. Read on and learn the law. Isn't it interesting that you hear fire cleanses? Well, then hell has to be a very clean place. Passing through the fire, I think they call this. All right, the book of Satan. 1. In this arid wilderness of steel and stone, I raise up my voice that you may hear. To the east and to the west I beckon. To the north and to the south I show a sign proclaiming death to the weakling, wealth to the strong. 2. Open your eyes that you may see, O men of mildewed minds, and listen to me, ye bewildered millions. Verse 3. For I stand forth to challenge the wisdom of the world, to interrogate the laws of man and of God. I request reason for your golden rule, and ask the why and wherefore of your 10 commandments. Before none of your printed idols do I bend in acquiescence, and he who saith, thou shalt to me, is my mortal enemy, foe. I dip my forefinger in the watery blood of your impotent, mad Redeemer, and write over his thorn-torn brow, the true prince of evil, the king of slaves. No hoary falsehood shall be a truth to me. No stifling dogma shall encramp my pen. I break away from all conventions that do not lead to my earthly success and happiness. I raise up in stern invasion that standard of the strong. I gaze into the glassy eye of your fearsome Jehovah and pluck him by the beard. I uplift my broad axe and split open his worm-eaten skull. I blast out the ghastly contents of philosophical whitened sepulchres and laugh with a sardonic wrath. Book 2. Behold the crucifix. What does it symbolize? Pallid incompetence hanging on a tree? I question all things. As I stand before the festering and varnished facades of your haughtiest moral dogmas, I write thereon in letters of blazing scorn, lo and behold, all this is fraud. Gather around me, O ye deaf defiant, and the earth itself shall be thine, and to have and to hold. Too long the dead hand has been permitted to sterilize living thoughts. Too long right and wrong, good and evil have been inverted by false prophets. No creed must be accepted upon authority of a divine nature. Religions must be put to the question. No moral dogma must be taken for granted. No standard of measurement deified. There is nothing inherently sacred about moral codes. Like the wooden idols of long ago, they are the work of human hands. And what man has made, man can destroy. He that is slow to believe anything and everything is of a great understanding. For belief in one false principle is the beginning of all unwisdom. The chief duty of every new age is to upraise new men to determine its liberties, to lead it towards material success, to rend the rusty padlocks and chains of dead customs that always prevent healthy expansion, theories and ideas that may have meant life and hope and freedom for our ancestors may now mean destruction, slavery, and dishonor to us. As environments change, no human ideal standeth sure. Whenever, therefore, a lie has built upon itself a throne, let it be assailed without pity and without regard. For under domination of an inconvenient falsehood, no one can prosper. Let established theophisms be dethroned, rooted out, burned, and destroyed, if they are a standing menace to all true nobility of thought and actions. Whenever alleged truth is proven by results to be but an empty fiction, let it be unceremoniously flung into the outer darkness, among the dead gods, the dead empires, the dead philosophies, and other useless lumber and wreckage. The most dangerous of all enthroned lies is the holy, the sanctified, the privileged lie, the lie everybody believes to be the model of truth. It is the fruitful mother of all other popular errors and delusions. It is a hydra headed 3 for unreason with 1,000 roots. It is a social cancer. The lie that is known to be a lie is half eradicated, but the lie that even intelligent persons accept as fact, the lie that has been inculcated in a little child at its mother's knees, is more dangerous to contend against than a creeping pestilence. Popular lies have ever been the most potent enemies of personal liberty. There is only one way to deal with them: cut them out to their very core, just as cancers. Exterminate them root and branch, annihilate them, or they will annihilate us. And you know what? No matter what your beliefs, that this is common sense, folks. I particularly found the part where he talks about past philosophies, past beliefs, customs. Isn't it odd how we want to say that we're in the modern world, but yet we have the death shroud of past religious beliefs? We have advanced, but yet we're laid in the sepulcher of this death shroud of ignorance. The death shroud that where it never meant that you ask the question. And yet the very so-called freedoms have now become the very chains of our slavery today. Yeah. Book 3. Love one another, it has been said, is the supreme law. But what power made it so? Upon what rational authority does the gospel of love rest? Why should I not hate mine enemies? If I love them, does that not place me at their mercy? Is it natural for enemies to do good unto each other? And what is good? Can the thorn and bloody victim love the blood-splashed jaws that rend him limb from limb? Are we not all predatory animals by instinct? If humans ceased wholly from preying upon each other, could they continue to exist? Think about today's political environment. Tell me where this is wrong and this out there is right. I'm fed up with it. Is not lust and carnal desire a more truthful term to describe love when applied to the continuance of the race? Is not the love of the fawning scriptures simply a euphemism for sexual activity? Or was the great teacher a glorifier of eunuchs? Why did the supposed Christ have women around him? Why is it that they suppress the supposed Gnostic Gospels of his sexual intercourse with Mary Magdalene? I contend that Yahweh is a sexual pervert. I don't think he had anything to do with manufacturing, but I can tell you scripture after scripture where he finds the woman's vagina to be more magic than he can handle. Yes, I'm speaking very bluntly. Love your enemies and do good to them that hate you and use you. Is this not the despicable philosophy of the Spaniard that rolls upon his back when kicked? Hate your enemies with a whole heart, and if a man smite you on the cheek, smash him on the other. Smite him hip and thigh, for self-preservation is the highest law. Let me tell you something, folks. The Old Testament is built upon an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a limb for a limb. They realized they couldn't sell that to the Western world, and so they adapt this. But nowhere do you see this ever in action. He who turns the other cheek is a cowardly dog. Give blow for blow, scorn for scorn, doom for doom, with compounded interest literally added thereupon. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, eye 400, 100-fold. Make yourself a terror to your adversary. And when he goes his way, he will possess much additional wisdom to ruminate over. Thus shall you make yourself respectable in all the walks of life, and your spirit, your immortal spirit, shall live not in the intangible paradise, but in the brains and the sinews of those who respect you have gained. Now, that's a wonder how many people, if they were truly strong of spirit, would ever have any problem with any so-called evil deity, daemon, demon, angel. No, I don't think so. You'd be seen in the spirit world as one badass. Now, if someone decided to do a WrestleMania with you, well, now you know you've made it to the big leagues. But folks, I have an idea that the other side sometimes may not be as rosy as we see. Book 4, we'll finish this one and then we'll end it here. Life is the great indulgence, death the great abstinence. Therefore, make the most of life, here and now. There is no heaven of glory bright, and no hell where sinners roast. Here and now is our day of torment. Here and now is our day of joy. Here and now is our opportunity. Choose ye this day, this hour, for no redeemer liveth. Say unto thine own heart, I am mine own redeemer. Stop the way of them that would persecute you. Let those who devise thine undoings be hurled back into confusion and famine. Let them be as chaff before the cyclone, and after they have fallen, rejoice in thy own salvation. Then all thy bones shall say pridefully, who was like unto me? Have I not been too strong for my adversaries? Have I not delivered myself by my own brain? And it goes on. I guess it don't know what the rest of it for there is. All right. I know this is kind of completely counter to what we are, but folks, how do we learn? I mean, how can you can now say, listen, I didn't read the whole book. I mean, if you want it, I got it on PDF. It's easily to get, but most people have never even read the book, yet they will condemn it as evil, as bad, yet they don't have a clue as what's inside of it. How can you be a practicing witch if you've got this cockamamie idea that you can't read something that the one who's apparently giving you power wrote? Why is it most politicians are Satanists? Why is it that most of the entertainment world are Satanists? Why is it that many in the philosophical, the sciences? There's a reason for this, folks. We've lived under an illusion. And we live the reality. I mean, you know, we keep the TV off most of the time because the reality that's going on, that's Christianity. Right now, we have a Supreme Court nominee that you have supposed Christians that get the dead ash put on their head each year to, I'm a Christian, who act worse than Lucifer. Lucifer isn't, you know what? Lucifer wouldn't have them. Satan would reject them. They're nasty. No one wants to be around them. But this is the reality that we live in. We live in where the haves and the have-nots far exceed the haves. And I think we have to be strong enough mentally, spiritually, to handle the news. I like what Satan said. Wait a minute. You've drugged my name in the ground for 2,000 years. You vilified me. You defamed my character. I've never said a word. Now I'm going to talk. And what his words do is they indict the very system that we base our culture and our society on. And he proves it's a fraud. Well, Peter, you can call them scumbags, but guess what? They are part of your core reality. And, you know, I don't think they are scumbags. I think that's it's almost bigoted, Peter, to say that. What, are you basically saying that all universities are scumbags, all politicians? You know, that's not right. You can't do that, Peter. You can say some. Did you say some? No. And folks, I know that this is not popular. Listen, I have lost the thousands and thousands and thousands of subscribers. Why? Because if we're really going to be what we say we're going to be, we have to know the playing field. And the vast majority of those in metaphysical New Age thinking have no freaking clue who the players on the field really are. And when they get out there, they get their asses kicked. And we know why. Thank you, Theresa. It's a heavy one. Not all right, Peter. I love you, dude. It's that we can't be like that. Listen, I don't agree with everything that whoever wrote this is, but I'm also a logical individual. I'm looking at it, and I like what someone wrote over on Trina's, and Trina tomorrow night on a second look, join us, is that, all right, you've had 2,000 years for your peace and love message. Hell, you even had Woodstock. Why is it that you humans can't seem to get it together? You keep on preaching love, you keep on preaching this peace, but yet your evidence and your action shows just the opposite. Well, you would say that if you had a friend in an intervention that had an addiction that was killing them, all you've done is just given them more heroin. Because if you can't be honest with the situation, no. You mean the world lies? I don't know if it's the world or if it's us. Listen, I keep telling people, you know, I had to once make, you know, where you have to hold the thing and the person earlier said, do you swear to tell the truth so help you God? And I stopped and said, which God? Now they don't do that. Now you take an oath based upon your own word. Well, gee, didn't we just read that? And when you go over into the spirit realm, what do you think you're going to do? If you think that there are ghosts and evil demons here, what, you think you have a veil of protection over there? What gives you that assurance? You know, that's the problem. Lynn and I were talking. I said, so we were told that God is God. Who said that? It's words, folks. It's a bunch of goddamn words. That's all the fuck it is. It's just words. Words. You don't know who wrote it. You never met the author. That book doesn't even exist, but yet we're saying that this is what spirituality is. This is what the afterlife is. How the hell do you know? It's just words. There's no validation for it. There's no authority for it. There's no history for it. But yet, we can't use modern day thinking and philosophy to overlace this. How many people have died because of this book? A hell of a lot more than any Satanic Bible, I'll tell you that for sure. Whew. Okay. I'm sorry, Loretta. It's just sometimes you just have enough. And I'm trying to figure this out. It's like the rest of y'all, but listen, I don't want to lie to myself either. It's not getting better out there. It's getting worse. Now, if that's the case, I need to know why. And I think when you get all sides of an argument, of a debate, you can now begin to extrapolate, well, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah. Apologize for the language. I really do. But I'm tired of seeing people dying. I'm tired of seeing people emotionally devastated. And I'm tired of seeing people helpless. And if we can't discuss books like this, like the Satanic Bible, then folks, it's an illusion. We're living a fairy tale. You're only looking at what you want to see. You only want to see and only hear what you want. And that's not how you learn. That's not how you grow. It's not how you're challenged. Susan, your mother was a very wise woman. All right, folks, I'm sure that this one, it should be very popular. We're going to continue to read it. It's not that long. And again, I think it's great information to at least consider. Again, I mean, how many, you see, I don't see Satan as this scary thing. Never have. And particularly now that I have truly awoke into my own self, I understand. Listen, I say this all the time. I really do wish Lucifer existed. I mean, that would be the ultimate experience, to have coffee with Lucifer. Just to sit down and talk to it. I don't know if it's male or female. Probably female. Beautiful, no doubt. Anyway. All right, sure. Keep all the hate letters to yourself. Folks, and again, I apologize for language, but it just, this book has done more damage to people. It's done more damage to our society, our culture. It's done more damage to our species. It's divided us. And as much as I like to think that, the lamb will lay down with the lion, the reality is, in this reality, that doesn't happen here. And my short little stay here, your short little stay here, has shown us this. And we don't like it. We don't like it at all. But isn't it odd, the very thing that I thought was freeing me was actually enslaving me? It made me a bigot. Made me judgmental. Made me vindictive. Condescending. Rude. Oh, but I still had the sanctimonious part of well, I'm a tither and I do everything that's in there, but I ask for forgiveness. I repent of my sins because, after all, I'm just human. So again, what are you being judged on this book for? Are you being judged for being perfect, or are you being judged for being imperfect? If you have a God that gives you free will and you choose to go against his will, why is that a sin? Why is that God even bitching about it? It gave you free will. Part of the whole deal, Whew. Not accepting it. There has to be a better way, folks. And what's out there now in this world isn't the way. And so we have to be honest with ourselves as a society, as a species, and say, well, what have we been basing our whole belief systems on? Because we got to go and throw that out, because that ain't working. We got 2,000 years of it showing it ain't working. It wasn't around in the golden era. It wasn't around in the age of enlightenment. You know why? Because this is the black book. This is the evil book. Whew, I know, and get some hate mail on that one. Yes, Rex, isn't it odd? He's a jealous God. Jealous of what? All right, folks. Boy, I really went over. All right. Thank you. Tomorrow, Trina and I will have a good discussion. And thank you for listening. Favor, bisto, basto. And hey, if you want the PDF, I'll send it to you. Make your own decisions. But before you make a judgment call, make sure you've read the material. That's all I'm saying. All right, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.